My name is Rulon Ensign Porter. This is my story. My story started when I was born on February 4, 1882, in Fremont County, Arizona. I am a native of the Little Colorado River Valley. My father and grandfather moved there with other relatives. The Little Colorado River flows westward to its confluence with the main Colorado River, just above the Grand Canyon. The raccoon was somewhat plentiful. I remember trapping 5 of them within a half-mile of the ranch. One, a large male with an underskin heavy layer of fat, which I suspect was partly put there by a sumptuous diet of corn and chickens. We got 2 quarts of oil from the animal. Skunks were plentiful, now and then a female with a brood of several youngsters. Badgers were there. I sometimes trapped them but more often dug them out of holes into which they had gone for refuge. There were also beavers along the river. I remember spending a pleasant, interesting hour up Chevelon Canyon watching them work on their small dams making beaver ponds. I tied my pony atop the cliffs, and then descended a crevasse to the water below. On alarm, the little animals disappeared in the pond to enter their burrows in the bank of the brook from underwater. Coyotes were plentiful. I remember seeing a drove of some half-dozen of them crossing the corn stubble not far from the ranch house. Rabbits, both the cottontail and the jack, were everywhere, and ducks were on the old river bottoms but a short distance from the house. Such was my native land, the home of my boyhood, a valley 200 miles across, plenty of room in which to roam. I was never outside the Little Colorado Valley until after I had attained young manhood. Since then I have rambled from sea to sea, and over mountains and plains, as the case might be. My father Sanford Marius Porter was born in 1855 and he and my mother Nina Molina Levitt were farmers. When they married in 1879, my mother was 7 years younger than my father. I married Nellie Emily May Knight on November 19, 1913, at age 31 in Salt Lake City. Nellie and I were married at the Salt Lake Temple. Elder Francis M. Lyman, president of the Quorum of 12 Apostles, performing the ceremony. In some way, Brother Lyman had learned of the prospective marriage, and asked to perform the ceremony. Nellie consented willingly. A telephone call brought him to the temple. Nellie is the daughter of Robert John Knight and Jane Yates, both of whom immigrated to Utah in 1864 from Devonport, Devonshire, England. Our daughter Myrtle was born in 1918 at the Winslow Hospital to which Nellie had been taken so she could have the best available care from Dr. Brown. I well remember the slight spanking given the little tot by the physician, and the resultant wail, which her mother pronounced the sweetest music I have ever heard. Because of her own condition, Nellie had been somewhat worried about the coming baby. But Myrtle was all right other than being a little undersized. Nellie had been ill and continued to grow weaker. She became confined to her bed in May. Her death took place at the home of my parents May 25, 1920. The body was buried May 27 in the St. Joseph Cemetery. Our baby, Myrtle, was cared for by her grandmother. After Nellie's death, I occasionally took time off and took long vacations to Utah, the coast, etc. It was in the spring and summer of 1922, about 2 years after Nellie's death, that I became acquainted with Miss Ethel E. Williams. She had converted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Boston, Massachusetts. She had come to Utah and graduated at Logan as a nurse. Ethel's mother had died in Boston in 1915. Some years later, the father, all his other children being married, moved to San Diego, California. It was here that Ethel and I met in 1922. She was then organist in one of the branches of the LDS Church. Our marriage was solemnized in the Salt Lake Temple September 28, 1922, Elder George F. Richards performing the ceremony. I lived in Navajo County, Arizona, Joseph City, Arizona, and Holbrook, Arizona. I served in the military from 1917 to 1918, in Navajo County. I served in the military in 1942, in Joseph City. We had a great relationship with the Indians. My granddaughter Leola wrote. Grandpa was respected by Indians and white people, sometimes worked as mediator between the two. I recall people coming to our home asking Grandpa to resolve water rights issues or else issues with the Indians. Joseph City lies on the border of the Indian Reservation in northern Arizona. The Navajo tribe lives on the flat lands in hogans, the Hopi tribe lives on the mesas in multi-level mud hut dwellings. I remember going with Grandpa onto the Hopi Mesa just north of our farm, several times, he having been invited by the Indian chief to attend their tribal meetings in their kiva. Grandpa was the only white man I know of that the Hopi Indians invited into their kiva, a sacred underground room where their chief and tribal council met to discuss affairs of their Hopi tribe. We attended many of their sacred tribal ritual dances. Grandma helped them as a nurse. She delivered many Indian babies. One year they brought a beautiful big hand-woven Indian rug to express their thanks to Grandpa and Grandma. It was on our living room floor for years. One year there had been some serious trouble on the Indian reservation among the Navajo tribe. A large Indian family came off the reservation and squatted on our land because they trust Porter. The little Colorado River skirted our property on the east and south. It was on the bend of the river that they built a large hogan out of mud, sticks, and cardboard on our property. This was the first time any Indians had come into the community to stay. Some of the farmers were concerned, but Grandpa said, let them stay as long as they don't cause any trouble. Nellie and I had 3 lovely grandchildren, Rulon, Leola and James. I was an author and historian. I once wrote, age is an attitude, so they say. Well, I've no erring strands of gray. My tummy's for use, not to pilot my way. And my all-white hair seems on to stay. My bones may grumble when skies are gray. Enough so I list to what they say. Not always just as the weathermen say. Perhaps it's partly as sages conclude. That old age is somewhat an attitude. I lived a full life. My grandson's wife, Ivadelle Williams, stated at my funeral. We, the family, have peace and comfort in knowing that through the plan that has been given to us, we have the knowledge that sooner than we can realize at this hour, we will all be united again as a family with Grandpa Porter and loved ones who have gone before us. May we understand that Grandpa has made entrance into the gateway of an everlasting peace and happiness awaiting those who will prove faithful. Thank you for listening to my story. May God be with you. Till we meet again.